Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going straight into a subject that definitely sparks a lot of curiosity, even if it doesn't always, make it into polite conversation. Advanced anal sex techniques and secrets.
Right. It's one of those topics.
It is, and, it's easy to sort of giggle or feel a bit awkward, but our source material today, it's a guide called Porn Advanced Anal Sex Techniques and Secrets.pdf.
Oh, okay.
And it actually makes a pretty compelling case that for many people, this is genuinely pleasurable. And they're eager to understand it better.
Yeah, and what's interesting right off the bat is how that guide tackles the social side of it.
How so?
Well, it points out that a lot of the discomfort, it really comes from societal taboos, not necessarily anything inherently wrong with the act itself.
That makes sense.
And if you think about it, with information being so accessible now, well, a guide that gives a really thorough, demystified look, people are going to look for that.
Absolutely. And this isn't just random stuff pulled from the internet. It feels considered the demand for this level of detail is clearly there.
Exactly.
And that's really our mission here, isn't it? To approach this with, the same kind of curiosity we bring to other topics, to really dig in, see what the source offers, and help you, our listener, get genuinely informed about something often kept in the dark.
Yeah, precisely. We're not here to judge or push anything. Just explore what the source material presents as the key things for understanding advanced anal sex better, from the basics right through to the specifics.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with something really fundamental the guide mentions right away. The delicate nature of even bringing this up.
Right, that sensitivity aspect. What were your thoughts when you read that part?
Well, the first big hurdle seems to be just talking about it with a partner, right? It's navigating those, ingrained social things within your relationship. The guide points out, pretty smartly I thought, that a partner might secretly be curious, but hesitant.
Or, yeah, the opposite. Maybe just zero interest.
Exactly. So that open, honest communication has to be there first. It needs to be comfortable long before you even think about trying anything.
That groundwork, that communication, it's absolutely vital. And the source also talks about physical sensitivity too, doesn't it?
It does. It's quite direct, saying the anus isn't, quote, designed for entry, biologically speaking.
Right.
So that difference means you need an exceptionally gentle, mindful approach.
Yeah.
Especially with penetration.
Precisely. Which leads to a really, really crucial point the guide hammers home.
Which is it?
Never, ever attempt any kind of anal penetration unexpectedly, out of the blue.
Oh, yeah. It uses a strong comparison, doesn't it? Likening the potential pain to, a really difficult bowel movement, but maybe much worse.
Exactly. And beyond just the physical pain, doing something like that, it could just shatter trust.
Yeah, kill any chance of exploring it together later.
That surprise element is it's a definite no. Enthusiastic consent, respecting boundaries. They're not just nice ideas, they're absolute musts.
Couldn't agree more. The source is really clear. It's about preventing physical injury and emotional distress. Okay, so moving on from that really crucial foundation, the guide then gets into some practical groundwork. Before the specific techniques, it talks positions.
Right, positions to help with comfort and access. What were the main ones it highlighted?
Okay, so a few core ones. There's the, lying on your back, legs spread or knees up.
Familiar enough?
Yeah, and a useful tip.
Yeah.
Pillow under the buttocks. Apparently that little lift can really help with the angle and comfort.
Okay, interesting detail.
Then there's the on elbows and knees.
Yeah.
Doggy style, basically.
Right.
But the guide notes that can sometimes cause tension. So it suggests maybe some support under the chest or belly to help relax.
To encourage relaxation. Makes sense.
Yeah, and maybe even extending the legs back to tweak the angle. Finally, side lying, legs in a sort of scissors position.
Okay, so the common thread seems to be finding that right angle. Minimizing resistance, promoting relaxation.
Exactly. It's all about physical alignment, making access easier, and reducing any natural muscle tension around there. Relaxation is going to be a recurring theme, I think.
Absolutely. It seems key.
Right. Then we get to the maybe less glamorous, but just as important bit, cleanliness.
Ah, yes. The question everyone thinks about, probably. How does the source tackle that?
Pretty directly,
Yeah.
as you'd expect. Bathing recently, having a bowel movement beforehand, those are the basics.
Standard stuff.
But it also emphasizes oil-based lubes like Vaseline or cocoa butter, not just for lubrication, but almost like a barrier.
Barrier? How so?
Against potential smells or transfer. It even says a simple wipe afterwards can leave things surprisingly clean.
Huh. Interesting point about the barrier effect.
Yeah. Big caveat here. It strongly warns against using oil-based lubes with latex condoms.
Right, because they can degrade the latex. That's a critical safety note.
Super important, yeah. Compromises protection.
Definitely need to highlight that. And what about more thorough cleaning? Does it mention things like enemas?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, right.
As a more intensive option, especially if penile penetration is the goal.
Okay.
But it also points out they're not like common practice for most people. It's framed as something for those who really prioritize that high level of cleanliness.
Right.
And interestingly, it even acknowledges that for some, the process of using an enema can have its own sexual element.
It really shows the spectrum of preferences, doesn't it? Okay, so from cleanliness, logically, to lubrication, which the guide seems to see as absolutely essential.
Oh, without a doubt. It's emphatic.
Yeah.
So it's something you need to seriously consider for any anal sex.
Yeah.
Because of the pressure, the tissues involved.
Makes sense.
And it specifically recommends oil-based lubes as superior to water-based. Why? They don't dry out as fast.
Ah, longevity.
Exactly. Vaseline is called the gold standard for staying put, providing lasting lube without adding friction. Cocoa butter is a close second. Thinner oils, like baby oil, less recommended.
That strong push for oil-based is noteworthy, especially with the condom warning we just mentioned.
Yeah, it suggests the guide might be thinking scenarios where maybe condoms aren't the primary concern, or it's just giving the lube advice separately, acknowledging the choice.
Gotcha.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so foundations covered. Sensitivity, communication, position, cleanliness, lube. Now, specific techniques, it starts with analingus, oral anal contact.
Yep. Framed as relatively simple, low-risk way to start exploring.
Okay. And what's the advice for getting started with that?
Gradual progression again. That theme keeps coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Ease into it. Maybe start with other oral sex first. Build comfort. And it highlights a practical point. Using hands, yours or your partner's, to gently spread the buttocks.
For access and control.
Exactly. Better access, more control during the act.
Makes sense. Allows for better targeting, maybe increases sensation too, and the actual techniques it suggests.
It describes a range. Light flicking, licking around the center, more probing with a rigid tongue,
Yeah.
applying pressure with a wider tongue.
Okay. Variety there.
Yeah, and licking or sucking the perineum, that area between anus and genitals.
Right.
And it specifically notes that perineum stimulation can be really good for men because of the prostate and testicles nearby.
Interesting connection.
But the main advice, experiment. And crucially, pay close attention to partner feedback, reactions.
That feedback loop. Essential always, but maybe even more so here, exploring sensitive, less familiar zones.
Totally. The guide's also realistic, saying analingus alone might not get everyone to orgasm.
Right.
So suggests adding other genital stimulation manual or from the partner. It also notes, interestingly, that the range of techniques for analingus is maybe a bit more limited than, say, for genitals.
Okay.
Which naturally leads into the next step, finger stimulation, as a way to introduce more variety, potentially deeper sensation.
Right. So finger stimulation is presented as the next logical step for exploring deeper or different sensations. What are the first things to consider there?
Slow down again. Take it slow. That's the mantra.
Okay.
And it explicitly says techniques differ a bit for men and women, so it gives separate advice. But a key initial point is just the texture difference. Fingers versus tongue.
Yeah, fingers are rougher.
Right. So, recommends good hand lotion and being really careful about trimming nails. No scratches.
Some sensible comfort tips. Minimize abrasion. And then there's that strong recommendation about gloves.
Yes. Using rubber or latex gloves, especially surgical ones. It's quite prominent advice. The guide claims the comfort difference can be huge.
Really? Even with lube?
Apparently so. Even with water-based lube. It suggests gloves can solve discomfort you might blame on tightness or nerves. Basically, there's just a smoother interface.
That's actually really insightful, thinking about the friction of bare skin itself being a factor.
Yeah. So after the glove tip, it outlines that gradual progression again for finger stim. Start with gentle touching, circling around the opening.
Okay.
Then gentle pushing, but without trying to penetrate right away. Stresses visually finding the opening.
All right, I guess.
And then using very gentle rhythmic pushes for penetration, advancing like a millimeter at a time until you're past that initial sphincter muscle.
Tiny increments.
Very tiny. And again, the partner's relaxation, mental and physical, is key. Suggests trying to feel like you're relaxing for a bowel movement.
So very deliberate, cautious entry, prioritizing comfort, readiness. Okay, let's get into the gender-specific advice, starting with male partners.
Okay, for men, the guide focuses heavily on the prostate gland, as a key pleasure source via anal stem.
Right.
Note sits on the upside of the rectum if lying on the back, and can also be stimulated just by perineum contact.
So external stimulation is an option too.
Yeah, suggests gently pushing, massaging the perineum, even without going inside at all.
Okay. And for internal prostate stimulation with fingers?
Reiterate, gradual, gentle entry. Once inside, slowly, carefully work towards that front rectal wall, the side near the genitals. That's where the prostate is.
Gotcha.
But it warns against sudden, forceful stimulation.
Right.
Can be uncomfortable or even cause premature
It
ejaculation.
needs finesse.
Definitely. But it also says direct pressure, gentle massage there can be intensely pleasurable for many men. And an interesting point, prostate orgasm can feel different, maybe more watery ejaculate. Suggests combining it with other stim, like fellatio.
Good reminder about combining things for a fuller experience.
Yeah.
Okay, what about finger stimulation for female partners?
Here, the guide really emphasizes the close anatomy. Anus, vagina, clitoris are all nearby. Suggests anal finger stim can work really well, combined with cunnilingus, vaginal finger stim, especially G-spot.
Makes sense anatomically.
Recommends starting with just incidental anal contact while focusing mainly on vaginal clitoral stim.
Incidental, like just brushing against it.
Yeah, gradually increasing pressure around the anus. Maybe even just with a pinky finger at first. But stresses again, prior discussion, make sure the partner is not just okay, but enthusiastic.
Gradual intro, clear consent, absolutely fundamental. Okay, what about internal anal finger penetration for women?
Again, very gradual entry, ample lube, maybe a surgical glove, and keep up the primary vaginal clitoral stem.
So don't make the anal part the sole focus initially.
Right. Suggests gently focusing stem on the rectal wall closest to the vagina once inside. Often more of a pressing motion, not lots of in and out.
Okay.
Also mentions it might take multiple sections, focusing mostly vaginally first, before shifting more attention to anal stem comfortably.
Patience is key, and there was an advanced technique mentioned.
Yeah, once both partners are really comfortable with individual vaginal and anal finger stem,
Yeah.
the advanced technique is simultaneously pressing along that shared wall between vagina and rectum, fingers in both openings.
Wow, okay. Requires coordination.
Definitely. But a really critical safety point here. Strongly advises assigning specific fingers to each opening.
How so?
Like use fingers of one hand for vagina, fingers of the other for anus, to avoid the, quote, very rare but potential risk of transferring intestinal parasites between the areas.
Wow. That's incredibly specific and important safety advice. You might not hear that in casual chats.
Okay.
Finally, we get to what most people probably think of as actual anal sex.
Yeah.
Penis or toy penetration.
Yep, and the guide is super clear. All the earlier advice. Preparation, gradual finger stem, absolutely applies here. Strongly recommends starting with finger penetration first.
As a warm-up and comfort check.
Exactly. Get used to the sensation, practice relaxing those muscles, maybe even progress to more than one finger. And it reminds you, a penis is generally smoother than fingers.
Right, so finger play is like essential prep.
Pretty much. Emphasizes taking your time. Maybe do other sexual stuff first, build arousal, relaxation, keep up manual stimulation during the lead-up.
Okay.
And it doesn't sugarcoat it. Warns about potential for significant pain if done wrong.
But also pleasure if done right.
Exactly. Pleasure if done with care and attention.
So what about the mechanics of entry? Any specific advice there?
Yeah, it cautions against just trying to hit the hole. Says the anal opening can be way harder to locate and target than the vagina.
Makes sense.
Suggests that, well, maybe not romantic, visual alignment might be safest, especially at first, which is another reason prior finger penetration helps finds the angle.
Right, establishes the pass.
Stresses the optimal angle varies position, anatomy,
Yeah.
and points out a finger already inside can act as a guide for the penis.
A physical guide.
Yeah. Says the partner being penetrated might try to guide, but caution there, their internal perception might not be perfect. Penetrating partners should also use their free hand for feedback adjustment.
That millimeter at a time approach comes back here too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Very slow, gentle, slight pumping motions. Minimal pressure initially. Focus is all on the partner's relaxation, mental and physical. Maybe encourage them to consciously relax, like for a bowel movement.
Yeah.
And lubrication. If pain's a concern, there's truly no such thing as too much. Load it up.
So what's the crucial step for getting initial penetration right, according to the source?
It's getting the head of the penis successfully past that internal anal sphincter muscle.
Okay, the main hurdle.
Yeah. Once that happens at the right angle, with enough lube and relaxation, further entry should generally be relatively painless for most men. Also advises lubing the whole shaft. Avoid dry spots causing discomfort later.
Good practical tip.
Once fully inside and comfortable, suggests maybe slightly adjusting the angle. Gently press the head against the internal wall closest to the prostate, man or vagina women. That area can be extra sensitive, enhance stimulation.
Okay.
And it notes naturally anal sex feels tighter for the penetrating partner than vaginal sex.
Right. And finally, some specific health and safety points related to penile anal sex.
Yes. Mentions doctors generally believe anal sex, even carefully done, can cause microscopic tears in the lining. Yeah. Usually not a major medical issue themselves, but they significantly increase STI transmission risk, especially HIV/AIDS.
That's a critical point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So because of that higher risk, the guy strongly recommends consistent, correct condom use if there's any uncertainty about STI status, even if condoms aren't always used for other sex acts.
Crucial sexual health info, responsible practices. And it briefly mentioned more advanced positions.
It did, yeah, like the person being penetrated being on top. Notes it can be great once comfortable, but maybe not for beginners. Harder for the bottom to relax muscles.
Okay.
Standing positions, too, potentially lead to muscle tension. Finally, highlights anal sex can be good for timing simultaneous orgasms, often due to the intensity.
Right.
And suggests the penetrating partner can boost pleasure with manual stim on other zones. References handjob techniques from their oral sex guides.
Wow. Okay. So a really thorough exploration, just like it promised. Let's try and wrap this up for our listeners. Bring it all together.
Yeah, it really seems to boil down to a core set of principles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
First, open, honest communication. Absolutely essential. About desires, boundaries, discomfort, everything.
Communication first.
Then gradual progression, key for everything. Analingus, fingers, penetration, take it slow.
Step by step.
Ample lubrication. Not just nice, but fundamental for comfort, safety. Use plenty.
Can't stress that enough.
Understand the anatomy helps too. Where the prostate is, the vagina's proximity, can really enhance pleasure.
Knowing the landscape.
Exactly. And finally, crucially, being aware of that elevated STI risk with anal sex and taking precautions.
Absolutely crucial awareness.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So approaching this, like any intimacy really, as a journey of mutual exploration, open dialogue. That seems to be the key takeaway for a positive experience.
What a said.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. How might understanding these nuances, the pleasure, the risks in even these less talked about activities, how might that lead to more fulfilling, safer experiences overall?
Yeah.
Maybe reflect on just how important that open communication, mutual respect, and commitment to learning really is in all parts of intimacy, and how getting reliable info can empower you to handle these talks and experiences with more confidence and care. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.